Story 1. I am a billionaire now, and I have a golden horse that I ride to my bathroom made of solid diamond. I am married to a stunning model, and I live in a castle in the clouds. The joke's on you and your organized friends. You should have been like me and not lost your overdue homework worth half your grade. Story 2. I became skilled at memorizing information quickly, allowing me to avoid sorting through my belongings to find documents. Overall, I have a much better memory than those who are more organized. Story 3. I'm good at organizing, but I struggle to maintain that order. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder makes me oblivious to my surroundings when I enter a certain state, and I don't even realize I'm doing the simplest tasks. The day ends with every surface covered in items I could have put away. I don't even notice when I set down the scissors and end up taking out every other pair as well. Story 4. I own a beetroot company with 12 children, 8 boys and 4 girls. I drive a large Jaguar. Yes, beetroot has been good to me. Story 5. I am an admissions coordinator at the university, and I bring a backpack to work filled with disorganized papers. Although things are never in order, I am thriving. I have learned to accept myself as I am. I also run a wedding planning business, and despite the chaos, we make it work. Story 6. Senior Technical Program Manager at Microsoft. My OneNote looks like my school bag used to, as do my Azure DevOps project backlog items. Story 7. I forgot to mention that I have a very interesting stack of papers, drawings, and notes that I take out of my backpack and pile up, telling myself, this is going to be a great idea, project, or design. The pile keeps growing and hasn't been sorted after almost a decade. I might as well look into it now that you're asking. Story 8. I just stopped using a backpack. I realized I could keep track of my belongings better if I could see everything at once, which also helped me remember to get rid of things I didn't need, since the number of papers I could carry without consequences was much lower. Story 9. I just received a compliment on my organized work folder. It's not true. I am still the kid who shoves papers into my bag and forgets that homework is due the next day. I just have calendar reminders now. Story 10. Shoving papers into my backpack. It's just work documents instead of homework. I am more organized, though. Story 11. I place papers into piles on my desk or in random locations around the house or office and am not organized. Story 12. I didn't go to college. I'm a manager at Pizza Hut. Could be worse, but it could also be better. I'm glad to be able to pay my bills, though. Story 13. A design lead for a large corporation. My life is still chaotic in every aspect except for my job. Story 14. I graduated high school with a 3.9 grade point average out of 4.0, and I never read that material. It went straight from my hands to my backpack, then to the scrap paper pile in my room, where it was folded into airplanes, scribbled on, or used to test my knife sharpening. Not much has changed since then. I still ignore paperwork whenever possible, and most of it gets used for sharpness tests unless it legally needs to be saved. I worked my way through college in the same manner, disregarding my grade point average. I didn't care at all. I failed some classes that required unnecessary work, but that didn't stop me from obtaining my degrees. At least I had some social experiences. Story 15. I work in production control. I am married and own a house. I mostly put papers directly into my bag, but I am otherwise organized. Story 16. I know 2 people from my past. One was a classmate who bagged groceries at the Acme in my hometown and may now be a manager. The other is a published research fellow at the University of Maryland who works on classified projects for the Army. Story 17. Working full-time from home in a position that requires me to be incredibly organized. Sometimes the desk can be a bit of a mess, but that's all. Story 18. I handle prior authorizations for a large hospital. Most of my work is digital, and any paper documents are shredded the same day. My house, on the other hand. Story 19. I have a master's degree but haven't managed to secure a proper job yet. So I'm currently doing casual freelance work in artificial intelligence. In some ways, it's better than regular employment, but it would be nice to have the stability that comes with a contract and a salary. Story 20. I have a good job. OneNote is much easier to manage than a notebook, but for the most part, I still just remember everything unless there is a requirement to document something or I have to maintain meeting agendas. Story 21. Buried under a pile of disorganized paperwork on my professional desk. I also don't always put my clean laundry away. Story 22. I am currently streaming, which is helpful since I am still quite unorganized. My desk is a mess, but every 4 months or so, it becomes annoying enough that I do a thorough cleaning and organize it by area. Unfortunately, it gets messy again just 2 days later. Story 23. Having the search function work on my notes, and them not being able to get stained, ripped, or blown away has really been a game changer. Story 24. In high school, my backpack was full of papers, some wadded up and some shoved in textbooks. I couldn't always find what I needed. Today, I am a senior manager at a large organization, and my inbox has thousands of unread messages. But I have no trouble reading and finding what I need. I have learned to be diligent with electronic file organization. Story 25. I manage a corporate cafe and am moving across the world for a couple of months because the company will pay my rent while I am there. Emails have really changed the game for us. Story 26. I had all these papers from one class, but I can't remember which one it was. I thought it would be clever to tape them together in sequence and then fold them up like an accordion, placing them in a self-made pocket in my book. Until one day, it fell out of the pocket and left a trail behind me between classes. Story 27. I am a real estate broker. Although I am not as successful as I could be if I were more organized, I have achieved a reasonable level of success. I was recently diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and I recognize that its impact has been evident throughout my life. One benefit is that I can quickly adapt to any challenges that arise in real estate transactions, which means I excel in difficult situations. Story 28. Project manager in construction. I don't use paper. It's all digital. However, my inbox and file structure are probably the digital equivalent of stuffing papers in a bag. That was until I was required to use a web hosting service with a pre-made folder structure. Now, I only archive the essentials. Story 29. In a creative field, where my organizational skills are better than those of many coworkers, I still keep shoving papers into my bags. I excel at sorting my own and others' chaos. Story 30. I work on a computer all day and never encounter sheets of paper. It feels validating. Back in school, I knew that computers were the future, and paper organizational skills were becoming obsolete. Story 31. My backpack was always full of rotting apples. At 30, I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The apples make more sense now. Story 32. Still organize all my receipts for the head of sales, sorting them weekly into claimable and unclaimable categories. Story 33. I am a graphic designer at a printing company, and there is a lot of paper and clutter around me because I am a visual person. At age 49, I was finally diagnosed with attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, which explains a lot. Medication is helping somewhat. Story 34. I keep all my important documents in a binder with protective sleeves, arranged chronologically. Everything else I own and do is in disorganized chaos. Story 35. I have organized papers in many different places. Boxes, hanging files, and piles on desks, dressers, and counters. My house is relatively tidy, with small piles here and there for a while, but there are many papers crammed into boxes and drawers. I get rid of clothes, toys, dishes, and other items, but the paper remains out of sight and out of mind, with very few exceptions. Story 36. I still shove things in a general area instead of where they belong. I often cannot find my debit card because I put it back in my purse after using it. My keys also go missing frequently because I place them in various pockets such as my pants, jacket, hoodie, or purse. Story 37. Can I post on behalf of someone else? I strongly suspect one of my coworkers was this kid in school. She never calls anything by its actual name if she ever has to look it up, despite being told the name multiple times and even provided with it in print through various channels. She makes up her own nonsensical names repeatedly and uses them interchangeably and incoherently. This makes it very hard to collaborate on any project because everything she does is in her own private language that has to be translated into something compatible with the outside world, which she then reinterprets into her own nonsense. There's more. She takes office supplies from everywhere. Whenever she can't find what she needs, instead of searching for it, she takes another item from another room, another desk, or another coworker. I cleaned out part of her room today and found 3 different hole punchers in various nooks and crannies. She had a complete set of markers that I purchased with my own money, which I noticed disappearing one by one over months. The only pair of scissors she hasn't taken from me are a left-handed pair that are also my personal property. I'm not left-handed. I bought the scissors to train my left hand. Being too unusual to steal is a bonus. It's the only thing I can count on actually being where I left it on any given day. I didn't get around to organizing her desk, but I did take a look through the drawers. Every drawer is a mix of charging cables, paperwork, bills she shouldn't have brought from home, odd trinkets that serve no purpose, sugar packets, and additional stolen office supplies. The icing on the cake was the gloves, though. I dug a pair of winter gloves out of a box of art supplies and random company documents. Or I thought it was a pair. There's 2 gloves, alright, rolled up together as if they were a pair, and they even slightly resemble each other, but they are different colors and different sizes. One is black with white around the wrist, while the other is dark purple with red around the wrist. The purple and red one is slightly thinner and longer than the black and white one. Now, maybe if you really couldn't spend 3 seconds to look at them, you could mistake them for being a pair of gloves. But I suspect what's happened is that she can't actually keep a pair of gloves together at home either. So she has no choice but to knowingly grab any 2 gloves she can find and then lose them. Story 38. I am here. I am organizing papers into various drawers now. I try to keep my office at work semi-organized. But at home, you open any drawer in any room and find mail, documents, books, and more. Story 39. Still unorganized, but my digital calendars and notebooks keep me sane. I am a video editor, so keeping my projects tidy is completely necessary. If my calendar is not up to date, someone will schedule activities over my editing time. Story 40. I work in a government job that pays reasonably well, but offers great time off and benefits. I still find myself putting papers in my bag without thinking. Story 41. Opening my own business, I'm still not the most organized at times. However, if you asked my teachers, they would say how intelligent I am. Story 42. I'm a dad whose child shoves all his papers into his backpack loosely. Despite my undiagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, I have done well for myself. I recently obtained a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Artificial Intelligence from Stanford. Story 43. Hyper-organized. Everything is filed, labeled, and properly documented. This was how I wanted to be as a child, but whenever I organized my things, my siblings would go through my bag, steal important papers, and destroy them to get me in trouble. It worked. I attended 3 summer schools. If my bag was already a mess, they wouldn't bother. It wasn't worth it to sort through everything only to have it stolen. Before anyone asks, my mother was aware of this and advised me not to leave my bag unattended. This occurred from 2nd grade to 6th grade, ages 7 to 11. Story 44. Commercial pilot. Everything is digital now, so my flight bag looks clean and organized. It's such a relief. I don't know what I would have done before digital flight bags and paperless flight decks. I dislike paper and love trees and being in the mountains, so I guess that's consistent. Story 45. I graduated from university with a master's degree and then moved to a Mediterranean country, where I am currently working as the human resources country leader. I am married to another expatriate, and we have 2 children. Story 46. Senior sales director still disorganized, but has a wonderful team that accepts me. Be good to people and they will be good back. It doesn't matter where your papers go. Story 47. I'm still disorganized, and now there are papers just shoved into bins and drawers all around my house. Story 48. I am a researcher in biology. My life is an interesting mix of being completely disorganized and the need to organize tasks thoughtfully to avoid the risk of transmitting malaria to myself and possibly my coworkers. Story 49. I'm an attorney. Now I put my disorganized papers into a backpack. I work for a labor union. Story 50. Married, one child, level 3 senior network telecom engineer. Salary range is $80,000 to $130,000. I own a house. I also have severe inattentive ADHD and may be on the autism spectrum. My organization system resembles high school when I carried all my books and papers in my backpack, except now it consists of piles. Piles of cables to sort into bins, papers to go through and file in the filing cabinet, and books to return to their proper places instead of where they were last set down. It doesn't stay that way forever. Everything gets cleaned and picked up, but it seems to need to be done again a few days later. Such is life. Story 51. Retired former vice president of a Fortune 100 company. My desk still looks like I randomly placed papers on it. Story 52. Sitting at my messy desk in my home office, I am trying to make money while doing as little work as possible, so I am browsing Reddit. Story 53. Pharmaceutical researcher. I am still very disorganized, but I was recently diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, which makes sense. Story 54. I just graduated with a master's degree in chemical engineering. Although I'm still not entirely organized in the classical sense, I manage to keep track of my tasks and activities quite well. I find that taking notes digitally helps significantly, as it's easier to arrange things in an organized manner when the space is not physical. Story 55. I worked as a production artist for a film studio for some time. It involved a significant amount of file management. Now I am a teacher's assistant. Story 56. I'm still quite disorganized, but I'm now an electrical engineer at a company where everyone is just as disorganized as I am. I earn a good salary and have the opportunity to travel frequently. By traditional standards, it is a successful career, so I find it amusing when people suggest that type B personalities cannot achieve anything. As a side note, it's frustrating that people keep asking me if I have been evaluated for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Story 57. Not my backpack, but my school had an end-of-the-year locker cleanup, and mine was the messiest, so it was kind of embarrassing. Now that I'm older, I stay on top of things, and everything in my house is meticulously organized. Story 58. I have learned to be somewhat organized, but I wouldn't consider it a strength. I am the education director for a museum. Story 59. I do the same things as an adult. I spent my entire life trying to rid myself of paper. I don't do a great job organizing things as an adult, either, but electronic records at least allow me to search for information. Story 60. Sitting at my desk surrounded by clutter that I dislike but ignore when I am working. Essentially, it remains the same. Story 61. I am a corporate marketing professional with strong skills in making mental notes and effective time management. Story 62. You might be surprised to find that I didn't do well in formal education. However, I am a very successful tradesman. Story 63. A company provided me with a warehouse, and I manage it similarly. We have no functional inventory system. Receiving paperwork is piled by the door, and no one can find anything except for me. Story 64. My time in college predates the modern popularity of backpacks as an organizational device. As such, some of us learned to be organized. I was not so fortunate, and my desk is now considered a hazardous site. Story 65. At work, I am pretending to be an organized person. My personal file folders are disorganized, but the public ones look great. Story 66. Working in a machine shop after attending trade school was a better fit for me than college, and nobody was surprised. Story 67. Revenue operations primarily focus on sales and customer service, as my career began in technology sales. Story 68. Disabled from carrying all that weight in my backpack. Just kidding. I injured my spine and was left disabled. Story 69. I didn't have a backpack. I used a plastic bag. When it wore out, I replaced it. If I lost it, it wasn't a big deal. I've lost it more than once. I immigrated to a country with higher incomes. I am a development and operations engineer. I've made it into the top 3% of income earners in my country of birth. Story 70. I never used a backpack. I had a purse and kept my books in my locker at school or at home. I didn't bother with carrying anything. I did all my homework at school. As for papers, I would throw them in the nearest trash bin. Story 71. Frequently in elementary school, my teacher would often dump my desk on the ground due to the papers and random books that were spilling out of it. My backpack was similarly disorganized. Now, in my 22nd year of my career, I have received 2 promotions, one in November and another in January. My manager has also assigned me projects with the goal of achieving a more significant promotion next year. Additionally, I am an artist and manage a small business related to that. However, my desk is still a mess. To be fair, I should also mention that I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder a couple of years ago, which many in the comments have coincidentally noted. Story 72. Mechanical engineer. Doing great. To be fair, I mostly stuffed the papers into a spiral notebook, then placed the notebook in my backpack where the papers fell out and got mashed down to the bottom. It was a slightly different path to the same result. I was an excellent student. The papers were never important to me because I never needed to look at them again. I received 2 semester B grades in 4 years of high school, one in Spanish and one in music. The rest were all A grades. Story 73. I work in compliance for one of the largest asset managers in the world. I am still disorganized, and my desk is a disaster. Every few months, I throw away all the important things I saved. Story 74. Mechanical engineer. My life is chaotic, but now everything is stored on the computer and is easily searchable, so it has never been an issue. Story 75. I was a poor student, almost failed high school, and dropped out of college. I'm doing very well now. Story 76. We moved in 4 years ago. I still have boxes in my office that have not been unpacked because I haven't gotten a file cabinet or shelves. I know most of what is in each box, but last week I had to dig for something that could have been anywhere. I now have 4 open, semi-unpacked boxes with their contents on the floor. I am perfectly at ease with this arrangement, but my family dislikes it. Story 77. I am an IT tech lead and team manager. While I am not the best at organization, I am on track for a promotion to senior manager in the coming weeks. Story 78. I feel about 15 years behind in life and regret almost every decision I have consciously made on a daily basis. Story 79. Hi. I am a high-level mechanic for the industry. I do not handle paperwork and struggle with organization. However, I excel in chaotic situations where others are panicking. For me, chaos is calming, while calm feels chaotic. Story 80. At home playing video games. I didn't go to work for 3 weeks because it is toxic, and I avoid conflict. Story 81. I am a senior proposal engineer in the industrial automation sector, earning a 6-figure salary. I tend to be unorganized, often creating virtual folders to store items, which helps keep my main files looking orderly. It's similar to hiding clutter in a closet when visitors come over. I just do it very well. Story 82. I am a medical writer and editor. I have worked for some of the top medical companies and was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder 8 months ago. Story 83. Director of engineering. I can now provide feedback on other people's Git commits. However, my workflow is much more organized. Story 84. It is unfortunate that I struggle to stick to anything. I set rigid standards after a complete reset, but I often ruin my progress within 3 days. Story 85. I am in information technology, working my way through my cybersecurity degree. It is also worth noting that my desk is the cleanest and most organized among my colleagues. It took me 18 years after high school to get here. Story 86. I am a heavy haul truck driver earning more in 1 month than most people I know with college degrees earn in 6 months. I would say I am doing well. Story 87. Photographer, musician, pharmacy technician, and part-time side hustle on eBay. I guess it's just how my brain works. I'm everywhere. Story 88. I thought I was bad until I saw what was truly bad and then realized what it led to. I decided to take the time to improve and not be such a mess all the time. Story 89. Not me, but my son. He just finished his heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician certification. He still dislikes paperwork of any kind. Story 90. I was never screened for attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder because I was considered gifted and quiet. Now I have piles of items in baskets all over my house. Story 91. Learning that simultaneously learning how to paint and cook is not a great idea. Now my whole kitchen looks like my backpack. Story 92. I store part of my brain in the cloud, and my Google Drive is very organized. Give me a piece of paper, and I will lose it in an hour. Story 93. I was the least organized mess of a school student. I am now an extremely organized and meticulous lawyer. Story 94. I am an engineer working in nuclear power. I still put papers in my backpack haphazardly and cannot get organized. I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder at 29. Story 95. About to graduate high school and pursuing a degree in game design. I am doing well, although I am still unorganized. I have strong skills in 3D modeling and I have a decent job. Story 96. I made it through graduate school and now work in an emergency room as a social worker. My locker at work still looks like my backpack, no matter how often I clean it. Story 97. My closets are still disorganized. I am extremely well organized with digital files. My desktop is organized, but the drawers are chaotic. I earned a master's degree, make decent money, and love my career. I would say I am still a bit disorganized, but I have made major improvements overall. Just don't look in my closet. Story 98. Somehow I run a farm. I don't understand either. The best reason I can think of is that it is naturally quite chaotic and unpredictable. I am used to that. Anyway, everyone is fed, watered, and safe, and I've hired an accountant, my husband, to handle the serious responsibilities for me. Story 99. Professional artist. I still handle all my receipts and papers like this, but now it's my car that they get shoved into and damaged. Story 100. My child started taking Adderall as a high school junior and is now an eye doctor, continuing to use Adderall. Story 101. My husband avoided paperwork, homework, and backpacks altogether, eventually leading him to skip school and not finish high school. He is now the director of operations for a large industrial consulting firm and earns a mid-six-figure salary. Isn't that unusual? Story 102. Running a business and expanding operations while appearing organized on the surface can be challenging. I often feel quickly overwhelmed by certain technology challenges and websites. Story 103. Diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in my 30s, I now use an iPad to keep everything related to school organized, including notes, textbooks, and important forms. It was life-changing for me to receive an iPad for medical school. Story 104. I wasn't organized enough to have a backpack. If I couldn't fit it in my pocket, it wasn't going with me. Now that I'm retired, I just finished cleaning out my basement and getting rid of unnecessary items. I suppose I'm a minimalist at heart. Story 105. Surprisingly, I am now quite organized when it comes to administrative work. Please ignore all those sticky notes. Story 106. Married for 20 years with a cool daughter who is thankfully more organized. I am a senior marketing director. I'm uncertain if my position is due to the Peter Principle or if I genuinely have a talent for strategy and leadership. Perhaps my true talent lies in creating good outcomes from the chaos I have generated throughout my life. I don't know how I arrived here, but life is fulfilling. Story 107. I am very good at multitasking and thinking outside the box, unlike most people. I do not get rattled when things become chaotic and out of order in this world. I just keep flowing as normal. It is hard to operate when everything is perfect, quiet, and easy. At times, I need noise, chaos, and imperfections to feel at home. I am in a very good place in life after being all over the place for so long. I can take care of my business and help others while still finding calmness in their mess. Just like now, I am typing quickly, listening to music, watching the NCAA tournaments, and eating. This is life. Story 108. The days are long and the nights are cold, but I still have these old papers to keep me warm while tucked underneath the nearest overpass. Story 109. Frantically digging through a giant box of papers, I am looking for one specific document that I desperately need. Story 110. I am an artist. It's organized chaos. Everything has its proper shelf or drawer, but within that drawer, anything goes. I know where everything is supposed to be. It doesn't need to be in an exact place. A sort of place is fine. I am not an organized person. Vaguely sorted by medium works for me. Story 111. Retired at 55. I had a career in finance. I learned to work with what I had and who I was. Someone else might not understand my system, but it works for me. Story 112. I am a 30-something multimillionaire doing well in a corporate role paying $250,000. I did not perform as well in school as I should have and underperformed academically. I should have gotten into an Ivy League school and pursued a career in investment banking, but I did not take that path. Instead, I worked hard in whatever I did. I quit and moved on when I felt it was necessary. I created my own opportunities and built safety nets, then pursued risks with those safety nets in place. I have outperformed in life by a significant margin. Story 113. I am carrying blueprints and contracts in my backpack. However, I am earning 6 figures and own 3 homes. Thank goodness for computers. I would be a mess without them. Story 114. Running an engineering team for a major technology company. Living a good life. Story 115. It took me some time, but I am doing well. I finally got a job that pays well and went to the doctor for ADHD treatment. Things have improved a lot. Story 116. I'm thriving in a really stressful office job because I have these undiagnosed superpowers. Also, I don't talk to my mom. Story 117. Small business owner. I feel miserable managing a company, but I am elated to do the work. I still take physical notes but never read them. Story 118. Doing the same thing to my computer desk. I know I have important papers. I just need to find them. Story 119. I am a researcher with a master's degree, and I will be pursuing my PhD in the fall. I also have an ADHD diagnosis. Story 120. But seriously, once I got to college, it was like some switch got flipped. I became the most organized person ever. Story 121. I am still doing it in law school, but most of our work is electronic and nothing is physically submitted, so it works out. Story 122. I work for software companies in a technical implementation role and am pursuing a second degree in computer science. I needed my parents to ask for approval to use binders with clear inserts instead of glue sticking materials to spiral notebooks because I genuinely could not complete a class that required that. Turns out I dislike paper. I enjoy using a keyboard and computer. Once I reached college and did everything on a laptop, I became very organized. Story 123. Working as a paralegal for a lawyer who makes my chaotic system seem like a well-thought-out plan is challenging. She is very skilled at her job. However, her workspace is a complete mess. I am the only person besides her who is allowed to touch it and tidy it for when the cleaner comes because I understand her system. I owe that to years of practice with my backpack filing system. Story 124. Now that I think about it, I was really bad in school and skipped classes often. However, since I like stationery, my binders and notebooks were always neat and organized. Story 125. Working in document management involves archival, retention, document issuance, document creation, editing, and formatting. I volunteer in a library occasionally. If someone needs to find a document or report, I assist them. I can even retrieve scans of microfiche and create a PDF if requested. Prior to this, I was heavily involved in photo development, where I processed films into photographs, preserving people's memories. Story 126. I am still putting things haphazardly in my purse. My locker at work is disorganized, and my car is always untidy. I feel like I am just a mess. Story 127. I am still organizing my papers. Now, it's the trunk of my car filled with work items. I really need to clean that out. Story 128. I didn't do my homework, and my locker and backpack were a complete mess. I'm a user experience designer now and earn a good income. I'm organized and keep everything digital. I discard all paper and opt out of everything possible. Story 129. Trying to organize my gaming desk. It's a mix of bills, old notes from my college classes, and my 7-year-old's homework and schoolwork. Story 130. Rose to the top of 2 industries, focusing on philanthropy and entrepreneurship. I retired from traditional work in my late 30s and now run a small business as a hobby to stay engaged. My 3rd-grade teacher said I was a disaster, and she was probably right, but it seems I found my own path to success. I rarely use paper in a digital world, and everything is well organized as a result. I just seem to have an aversion to paper. Story 131. I am a builder and general contractor with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder who never draws any plans. Every concept remains in my head until I manage the project closely. Then I walk away and allow my team to finish effectively. Story 132. I am a nurse, and my workday is as disorganized as my backpack was, but I still get everything done on time. Like many others, I was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in my early 20s. Story 133. I am a teacher. I place papers in any available space or cabinet. My students know my response is, "It's somewhere around here." Essentially, I traded my backpack for an entire classroom. Story 134. Raising 3 kids means instead of papers shoved in a backpack, it's papers shoved in folders and random drawers. My oldest son is just like me with papers everywhere. My daughter is like her dad, thank goodness, and my youngest is still too early to tell. Digitizing things makes it easier for me. I wish I had a smartphone and Chromebook in high school. Story 135. I work in a factory and take a backpack to work every day. Now I just put my lunch and energy drinks into my bag. Story 136. You should see the back of my work van. I know where everything is, but I am guilty of losing something I just put down back there. Story 137. I am still putting papers into random drawers and cupboards. I have a couple of degrees, but I feel depressed. It's the usual situation. Story 138. I am a professional photographer, and my file management is terrible. I hope my digital asset manager never sees my local disk. Story 139. In a maintenance van that looks cluttered, I have organized my tools to an extent. Everything has its place. Story 140. It's fine as long as you learn how to ride the wave and harvest the crops your hyperfocus has sown. I learned that I cannot accept hierarchies unless my bosses are smarter or better than I am, so I set up my own company and try to maintain a small number of employees and a larger set of freelancers. Most importantly, I don't handle my taxes or administrative tasks myself, as I don't find joy in them. Story 141. Burned out from information technology after working for DXC Technology, Cisco, Microsoft, and many other large companies. The bigger they are, the more frustrating the experience. I am now pursuing solopreneur work in lawn care and woodworking, in addition to gig delivery services. I have a general educational development certificate. Story 142. Doing okay. Now I save everything to one folder in my Dropbox. Having a search function makes it much easier to maintain this lifestyle. Story 143. I worked for a crash lab, managed virtual influencer agencies, and started working in landscaping and planting. Now I am a software developer. It was a foreshadowing of my life. Story 144. I have a PhD in molecular biology and own a pharmaceutical consulting business. I'm doing well. My office is messy. Story 145. I graduated in 1966, ranking 409th out of 411. I wasn't even last. I spent 10 years in the United States Army. Afterward, I earned a degree in civil engineering in 1982. I worked on nuclear power plants and on the atomic bomb cleanup project in Hanford, Washington. I started an engineering company in 1998 and am in the process of turning it over to two longtime employees. I don't do much now beyond growing cannabis and making kitchen knives. Looking back, I don't believe I have ever worked a day in my life. High school had to be the most ridiculous experience I have ever had. Story 146. I have a culinary degree and have managed hotel kitchens. I sewed medical equipment, and now I make drapery for wealthy clients. Currently, I am working on another contract that involves a large casino. Story 147. I will tell you. She is 23 years old and still living at home without a college degree or prospects for a career. She also enjoys attending furry conventions. Story 148. My papers are in my work bag, junk drawer, and desk. Some are on my dining room table waiting to be organized. I know what papers are in my work bag, junk drawer, desk, and on my table. Please do not touch, move, or look at them. Thank you. Story 149. Team leader at a warehouse with a notebook for meticulous record keeping. I have a folder at home containing every important document I may need. I have learned from my mistakes. Story 150. I figured out that I am neurodivergent with autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and now I have 3 children who are equally disorganized. I need to look through their backpacks to find important papers they crumpled up and forgot to give to me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.